Hi, I'm Irene Parker with Timeshare Solution and Surrender. This is episode number 74, and we're doing the best we can while Kim recovers from her surgery, and we don't want her to push it. I've always said I can't do the show without her, but she has been thanks to the guests that have been more than willing to share their timeshare experience, the show is going on. Someone sent me a card with a little monkey hanging down that said, "I'm fine, this is fine." And I kind of feel like that. So I'd like to first introduce our first guest, which is Dan and Amanda Marshall. And you are in Indiana, correct?
Yes.
Okay, they're going to be talking about their Wyndham experience, which I'm always surprised when someone has a form of proof and they still can't get their developer to see to reason. We also have on the show today Glenda. And Glenda is here to talk about her blue-green experience. And one of my favorite states is Louisiana, and Glenda is in Louisiana. So finally, we have two more guests today. We have Brad in my favorite province in Canada, British Columbia. We hear from a lot of Canadians, so we're pleased to have you here today. And as kind of a surrogate co-host, we have Cheryl in South Carolina. Cheryl is defaulting on 5 timeshares. She was on episodes 72 and 73 to kind of just support everybody that's here. And we have Brad to end on a positive note, who resolved his dispute. And we're here at, never give up. And we also, 5 minutes before I was starting the show, we received someone that said that Grandview at Vacation Village has agreed to take their timeshare back. They have medical hardship. They will only accept a timeshare back if there is medical hardship. But before we go, since some of the companies we're talking about made the news this month, it's very unusual to have 4 news reports by national news outlets to report on timeshare. The most recent, now 3 of them are in our July TARDA newsletter. And if anyone wants to receive that monthly newsletter, they can go to TARDA, contact us, Timeshare and Resort Developer Accountability. And the first included in the July newsletter is Meadow Lake managed by Vacatia, that also is acquired Vacation Village and DM Management. And that person was trying to get out of their timeshare for 20 years, and they've have medical condition and can't travel. And I've said before that sometimes I feel like the only court open is the court of public opinion. So we had then the second article was in the New York Times. My timeshare is an albatross. How can I get out of it? And they interviewed an attorney who said it's worthless. If you're going to buy a timeshare and you call a licensed broker who can work in all that charges no money up front, functions like a traditional real estate agent, that buy a Marriott or a Hilton timeshare that has some resale value if you buy the deed. Even Marriott points have some residual sales. We also had last week a I thought, a remarkable show of the Mexican timeshare experiences and the involvement of the Mexican cartels distributing fentanyl and timeshare exit scams in America. And we may have a guest join us during the show, kind of a follow-up that she's bought at Crystal in Mexico. And so just on July 21, there is the newest report is Yahoo Finance on July 21. And the husband had pancreatic cancer, and the wife has breast cancer, and Hilton Grand Vacations refused to release them until the reporter from Yahoo called. Now, I think this is ironic because Abigail Fisher is a Wyndham reporter that a few years ago explained why hedge funds like timeshare stocks, because they're evil. And just like you could make a lot of money buying Philip Morris stock while they slowly killed their customers, check out these timeshare stocks that trick people into signing complicated contracts. And most people don't cancel during the rescission period. As a retired stockbroker, I cannot imagine telling somebody to buy a stock because they're good at tricking people. So with that, I think the best family to start with, because I found Amanda and Dan's sales agent to be extremely devious and conniving with what he did to you. So go ahead and share how you ended up with Wyndham, how you found TARDA, and what has been the progress so far. Whoever is the family diplomat that would like to share their experience.
Well, we found Wyndham in Destin, Florida, while we were on our honeymoon this past October. They got us to come in and told us that they would give us an 8-night, 7-day free stay anywhere. We were supposed to be honeymooning in Key West, Florida, but there was a hurricane, and so we opted to change our honeymoon just in case. And so Dan asked them if we could use that free stay in Key West because we really wanted to go there. And they told us that we could. And that was the only reason that we attended the meeting. Had they told us that we couldn't, it probably would have been a lot more of a struggle to get us to go in.
And you said that you could use it for Key West, but there was an expensive charge, wasn't there?
Yeah,
when $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah, an
How
extra
much?
$3,000 or $4,000 to use it.
Okay.
Not very
exactly
free. So, but yeah, so they got us to buy some points, and we were super excited about it. Between the two of us, we have 7 kids, and so we thought this would be a really good opportunity to take some family vacations. We opted to take our first vacation, just the two of us, in March of this year. We went to Edisto, South Carolina. And when we checked in, it was late and in the evening. And so when we checked in, they said that we needed to talk to, I don't remember what they called her, in the morning, and she would get us set up for a meeting. And she called us in the morning and had us come in, very nice, but made it sound like we had to attend a meeting. So we did, and we were told it'd be an hour. It was more than 7 hours. And we were told a lot of different things about how we had missed our opportunity to upgrade because it had been too long. And so they were going to be really nice and reinstate the fact that we could upgrade to bronze permanently, and how great of a deal it was. They went over all the numbers and how much money we'd be saving and all of these things. And after 7 hours of sitting there and not having any food or anything really but water to drink, I don't think that your quite thinking clearly. And so we opted to go ahead and do it because we felt, you know, we were saving a lot of money is what they told us. So fast forward to, we got home from our vacation. Oh, they did call us while we were on vacation to see how our sales meeting went. And of course, I said a lot of nice things about them because I genuinely thought they were telling me the truth. We got home, and 2 years ago, I had breast cancer, and I've been having a lot of residual side effects, other medical problems from medications and things like that that I have to take. Um, and so I kind of started looking at our Wyndham timeshare to see if there was a medical clause that would get us out, because I'm having to go to Vanderbilt quite often, a lot of medical bills and things like that. And while looking at it, I found that we actually had until October of 2025 to upgrade to bronze. So them telling us that they were reinstating something that we already had was a lie. I started doing research on how I could get help in talking to these people and getting us out. And that's how I found TARDA. And I found some other groups on Facebook. And in those groups, I found a bunch of emails to the executives of Wyndham. And instead of starting at the lowest man on the totem pole, I started at the top. And I got a response within 3 hours of my email, which I was floored. She made herself sound like she would be super helpful. We went back and forth a couple of times on email, but nothing specific. She told me that if I turned in all of the information that I had, including a picture of the part of my contract where it said that we could upgrade until October. And I also had proof from our salesperson through text message on reinstating and what great deals we got them to open for us. And that they would do an investigation. While their investigation was literally like a day or two. So they didn't really investigate much of anything. She gave us a phone call, and she was actually very rude. She talked down to us a lot, told us that we kept interrupting her, but she would never stop talking, so we couldn't ask any questions. My husband told her that the conversation was going to have to end because of the way she was talking to us, and she continued to talk at us, so he hung up on her. But after that, I did address her through email again, showing her that in that phone call that she had told us that they actually reinstated Sidekick, not our bronze membership. And I had proof that Sidekick was complimentary for 1 year from our original purchase date. And also in our second contract, it was also complimentary for an entire year. So the fact that she said that they reinstated Sidekick was not accurate. I rewrote an email to her addressing everything in the phone conversation and including those pieces of paper that showed that our Sidekick was complimentary. I recently received a rebuttal from her that was also quite rude. Pretty much in so many words told me that I should stop bothering them, that they will not investigate any further. Once investigation is done, our case is closed, and that I gave her no new information, which was also inaccurate.
And let me just stop you there, recollecting some of the things you mentioned, saying that you had to attend a meeting or an update. The only time you have to attend is if you accepted a promotion, which they will charge you for the stay if you don't attend it. But I also want to let people know that free gifts are not free. Anyone who signs a contract pays for those gifts. And basically they're very good at dodge, ignore, stall. And we know of a couple law firms. If you would want a legal opinion, law firms are not supposed to guarantee an outcome either. And of course, they're quite expensive. And it just, first of all, I wish they would rename the department something other than Wyndham Cares, right?
Yes,
And
because they do not care.
yeah, we've had, and I've also want to just compliment you that maybe one out of every 500 people composes a comprehensible, clear report. And you did that. And so I said a prayer and hoped you would become a TARDA volunteer. And not only do we have you, but we've heard from 7 families over the weekend that I could spend the rest of the show talking about these horrific reports from really good people. 2 of them have their grown children in a state of shock. But what looks like we have Destination Timeshare is Jeremy, who's been on this show before. Let me see if I know how to do this. Here we go. See, old new tricks. Okay, Wyndham has creative way to try to make you think you need a presentation, as what I just said. I've heard many, and I'm sure there are many that I haven't heard of. We're always happy to have chatters with us on the show, and especially chatters that have as much expertise. Destination Timeshare, if you search that, Jeremy, it's not his day job. He's an IT person, but he has a program for people that are blessed with honest sales agents. And I get annoyed with these people that say, oh, these people that are complaining, they just need to make the best of it. And then one family said, we used to say that, and then we got we got duped. So,
Yeah.
Glenda, I'd like to go ahead and an equally remarkable. Oh, and I'll go over the numbers, so Amanda, that you gave me. Um, that you bought 154,000 points, and the additional 150,000 points that you would not have purchased without this sneaky deception is $34,449, and you financed 29,000.
Correct.
And then you have stopped making loan payments, and you're planning to default, feeling like you have no choice, and the anger from what they did to you, because you were willing to keep the first contract, right? I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's nothing wrong with that one. And people, your credit score can drop up to 200 points. But by having a clear, concise report, you just don't write that for Wyndham. You're also writing it for a lender if you have to borrow money a year or two from now. And the next step then is filing the regulatory complaints, reaching out to your on your side reporter, because that seems like a surefire thing. If you get, some ABC, CBS reporter to make a call for you, it's amazing what can be accomplished. So now, Glenda, go ahead. You're probably hearing some familiarity with what Amanda discussed, and same thing, how you found, how you ended up. Well, you have, this was your 4th purchase, so you had been happy with Blue Green for quite some time, I'm assuming, and then explain how you ended up with this last purchase that turned it into a timeshare nightmare, and how you found TARDA, and what the process has been like for you.
Well, thank you, Irene, for this opportunity, actually. Um, I had been with Blue Green for about a little over 10 years. I had made some small purchases. I was a nurse. I worked all the time. I hardly ever took vacations. And I just happened to take this one vacation up to the Smoky Mountains. I had to go into Bass Pro or something, and I ran into Blue Green. And I said, well, you know what? I deserve a vacation. So I ended up in the Smoky Mountains, and I bought there originally. Time goes by, and they encourage you to go to a meeting every now and then, um, and start to buy up a little bit. So I did that over the course of about 10 or 12 years. And I ended up with the gold level. And then COVID hit, working twice as much. And then I was already 68 or 69, and I decided to retire because I was just exhausted. And at the same time, my mother came down with dementia. I had had some really good vacations with Blue Green. I didn't have, complaints. And they had always told me that I could get out of it if I ever needed to. So I helped my mom with dementia. I found myself then on just on Social Security in a small retirement. And the co-owner of this contract developed some health problems that was causing some complications in travel. So I could start to add up the obstacles, and I realized that I was going to have a problem. So I decided to go out to one of the locations with Blue Green just to get away for the weekend. It was going to be my 70th birthday, and I just wanted to see the ocean for a little while. So I went out to Perdido, or Panama City, and they said, well, come just sit in this meeting, and Hilton has bought us now, and we want you to hear some of the updates, and we might have some things in place that would be able to help you. Because I told them I was in a compromised financial situation that I had never experienced before. I had all of these unknown variables, such as my mother's illness, the amount that it was going to take to stabilize her situation. I was the only relative, and I was going to have to pay her mortgage and her HOA fees, all of these things. And I was retired, and my co-owner was not going to be able to travel that much. So I said, yes, I'll come listen. I'll come see how you can help me. So before it was over, I won't mention his name, but he had been with Hilton before, and said that he could help me. And he offered to consolidate all of my contracts so as to minimize the maintenance fees that were going to be due. And I said, well, if I wanted to keep this, maybe I could, if the maintenance fees weren't going to be in excess of $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. And so he brought me the contract and told me it was going to be frozen at a certain amount and that I wouldn't have to worry about it. He understood totally how life can happen, and understood my situation. So I signed it. Well, the maintenance fee did not go down, and it has gone up about half again as much. So this year, so I did file, I had a case against them initially last year, and they investigated and said they couldn't come up with anything that...
Was that a case about this particular incident?
About that particular incident, because at the time I thought I had recorded it, and that threw them into a frenzy. And then I could not find the recording. We had changed phones, and I could not find it. So
let me interrupt you there, because people need to know if it's a one-party state or a two-party state. So a two-party state, you need the other person's permission to record them. Now, if you're at home and you're recording for your own personal information, nobody's going to know about it. We did have someone that recorded in Florida not knowing it was illegal and recorded fraud. So I contacted the criminal investigative unit of the Florida Attorney General's office, and they said, well, if you go forward with it, you could sue him, but if you caught him defrauding someone, then that doesn't really look in their favor either. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yes, that's a good point. And
yeah.
So I have files now. A complaint with the Florida Attorney General. I have stopped paying on the mortgages because after I signed the contract, here I had another mortgage to pay. And I had already told them I was at my financial limit. I had to use $5,000 from my mother's funeral fund just to pay the maintenance fees this year. And so when I called to see if they would let me out of the contract, if they would offer me a medical hardship or some sort of hardship paperwork. They pretty much told me that that was not going to be available to me, and that I could take out a loan, or I could pay them again an annual maintenance fee amount with 1.5 times the maintenance fee, which is impossible for me. So at this time, and so I have never ever defaulted on anything in my life. It was hard for me to do all this, and I don't know if I could have done it without support from the TARDA community. I found TARDA by scrolling through in desperation, trying to find a voice, someone that's doing something about this congressionally or anything, because I know that many people in my generation, the timeshare purchase was kind of popular for a while. And so now, with accumulating health problems, financial difficulties, they're going to have to come to some sort of process where they can help people more. But I have defaulted. I have not received any information from them as far as correspondence and email. I was, it's just one of these things where you kind of feel like you're out there, but in some way I felt empowered because I was able to at least say, I can help my family now. I'm not going to keep this timeshare. I'm going to let it go. I've done all I can do with that, and I can at least help my family.
Well, and I always like to share, some people are watching our show for the first time, and an ICE agent that reached out to me, and when the collection agent would call him at work, he would tell the collection agent, I'm so glad that you called, which no one ever says to a collection agent, and would try to keep the collection agent on the phone as long as he possibly could. And that was a Diamond Resorts where he wasn't sold enough points for a family of 6 to go to Hawaii for a week. And when you post on Facebook, you're preaching to the choir. But when you post on LinkedIn, most of the executives are on LinkedIn, so they would post, the CEO would post something about a wonderful golf tournament they had, and he would fire back with, you financially ruined my family. And one time he said he had a bad day at work, and he sent the executives 50 tweets. And after 18 months, he got a call, and I think he just became such a squeaky wheel headache. I'm sure that's what contributed to it. Now, we have Brad, who's been listening to all this thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not as bad as you did not have a loan, but you still had an uphill battle with beginning in 2014. And we're not going to say the name of your timeshare, because one of the goals of TARDA is to encourage better communication. You can all send the link to this podcast to Wyndham and Blue Green and tell them that, maybe a picture's worth 1,000 words, because especially both of you have, and especially Amanda, having proof that a text message saying, and I remember you told me about it, it was, y'all are lucky that you got them to reinstate that program. That's proof. But then they're like, what are you going to do about it? You can't sue them. You agreed to arbitration. And there's also a line in your contract where you agreed you didn't rely on anything a sales agent said. So it's such a gotcha. And I think Brad will agree, even with no loan, if you, and my husband and I have owned 4 timeshares, fortunately, two of them took it back without a fight. But I don't know if anybody would buy a timeshare if they had known how I know Cheryl, how difficult it is on the end game. And Glenda mentioned 18 months of maintenance fees. We've had, and if we have time, I'll share one really disturbing, because for some people that's $15,000 or more. if you have a lot of points, they're punishing their best customers. I don't know if they just think, well, they got the money or what. But Brad, what is your opinion? I know I saved your quote when I asked you to be on the show. I almost cry when I read the stories of other folks at high interest rates and deceptive practices. Where is the FTC when you need it? I'll answer that question after you share your timeshare experience.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Irene for all the help she gave us in coaching us to have our situation resolved, which was unofficial deed back. The timeshare company, the management company, didn't exactly buy it back, but they took it back after I I paid a fee, which seemed a bit ironic, but it was a good deal to get out of it. If you hear my cat in the background, I hope you can ignore her. Um, we had owned our timeshare in Florida for over 25 years, and we really enjoyed it. It was in a lovely spot, and we used it extensively when we lived in Ontario at the time.
Is she a calico?
Um,
Is she a calico?
this is Maisie.
And she's
She
a
likes to join
calico.
all my calls. Um, the problem was that we had several problems, but we enjoyed this timeshare for many years, and we ultimately bought a second one at Carriage Hills outside of Toronto where we lived, and used it for a while as well. But we moved to BC, which made getting to our timeshare in Florida more complicated each year, and we tried everything to do it. Uh, but then the maintenance fees just started to go up and up and up. By the way, we had bought an actual title deed. We had a lawyer as part of the purchase. We had a deed registered in the county. So maybe that situation is a little bit different than some of the other folks. Also, we had been offered to convert for weeks to points, but we refused. We're not going to go with points. Don't know why. I just felt it was not just didn't sit right to me. I liked my fixed weeks. But after having moved and finding it very troublesome to get to our resort and enjoy it, plus the maintenance fees going up and up and up, and also realizing that timeshares were really great until they weren't. Like back in the day when we bought our timeshare, it was not easy to get a vacation anywhere. You had to have a travel agent and it was complicated. But after owning ours for about 15, 16, 17 years, you could go on any website and get vacations all over the place really cheaply. So the whole value proposition of a timeshare just evaporated once the internet took hold. So starting about 2014, or maybe a bit earlier, we decided we want to get out of this. It's just not working for us. The operator said, but you can rent it. So we thought, sure, why not? We'll try renting it. But we learned after a couple of years that the commissions and fees and everything else they threw on top of it was such that we weren't coming close to making the maintenance fees each year through rental. Although the place did rent, I must say. Even through COVID, it was renting. I was quite surprised. At any rate, it finally got to the point where I needed to take a little more aggressive action. While this was happening, a whole thing was happening with Carriage Hills, where the Carriage Hills and Carriage Ridge owners in Ontario finally got together and forced a liquidation of the property and take it out of timeshare mode, which was the right of the owners if you read a small clause in the agreement. But the management company would throw sand in the gearbox of trying for owners to find any other owners. It eventually took.
Let me stop you there. Yeah. If you go to my Facebook photo, it is Carriage Hills, the annual meeting in 2019. Those owners did a GoFundMe so I could attend their annual meeting, and it was probably, I think, 4 or 5 years ago now that we were staying in our timeshare in Hawaii, and it's the first time I've had 134 responses to an article. And I published all of those responses. And I guess because it's the United States, trying to organize people down here is like trying to organize squirrels. I have never met a more organized group of people than Ontario Canadians. And what they did is they formed an actual, they charged people, all their owners, a certain amount of money, and they retained a law firm. And this was owned by Wyndham, Carriage Hills and Carriage Ridge. And their certified exit, which I understand now has been discontinued even there, but it didn't apply to these resorts that had been acquired. So they acquired Carriage Hills and Carriage Ridge from Shell Vacation Club. And they went to the Ontario Canadian Consumer Protection Agency and forced the sale of both of those. So Dunwoody was the organization that handled and all of the owners got like $3,000 or $4,000 back.
Little less maybe.
Yeah, and one of the buzzwords that we hear today is repurpose. So every couple of months I hear about, there's a company called Lemon Juice Capital. Volca is involved with TOB, TOWB, that will help do an analysis and see if they can convert all or part of a timeshare to whole use condo. So I just wanted to stop you there and interject that and then in Quebec they organized and they formed something, and they went to the Quebec. They proposed a law. They changed the law. In Quebec, a timeshare is defined as a service contract, like a gym contract, and it's much easier to cancel, liberal reasons to cancel. So go ahead and continue with, I think you said you started trying to be released from this in 2014?
Yeah. So while the Carriage Ridge matter was proceeding, I think that's how I found out about TARDA. The name came up somewhere along the line, and I started following you. I got on your newsletter, but it wasn't until last year maybe I saw one of your podcasts, and there was a fellow on the podcast who just simply said, I told them I'm not paying any more money. And he just said, I refuse to pay them any more money. And in any call or correspondence, he just simply flatly refused no more money. And they eventually gave him an exit. I thought, okay, I'm going to do the same thing. So when it came time to pay last year's maintenance fees with our timeshare, I just said, I'm not paying it. I've tried what I've done to try to get out. I've listed this thing for sale. And whoever buys it can pay the maintenance fee, but I'm not paying any more. They wrote back, of course, and said, well, you have to because you still own it. But then I had Irene help me craft a letter that simply said, I'm not paying it. So give me an exit.
And you listed everything all the steps. You couldn't have done any more than what you did.
Oh, exactly. We had taken all the steps that they had earlier indicated I was supposed to take in order to have an exit. So at this point, I simply said, fine, here's everything we've done. Here's the situation, and I'm not paying it. So offer me something, give me an exit. They did. So not only did I manage to get out of Carriage Ridge through a legal action against the timeshare company, but I managed to secure an exit from the Florida property as well. Now, one part of the company still thought I owed them money. I started to get late notices. I even got email from a collection agency, but I just kept sending this back to the people at the headquarters saying, look, I'm not paying it. Let's have this exit. And finally, they flipped it over to a fellow in one department that does the deed management. And he wrote up what I needed to do, which was to sign this and send them some money, a fee, and get a notary to sign signatures and so on. And finally, I got an executed deed that was registered with the county, that I no longer had any obligation for the property. I basically signed it back to the management company. It took
I have
about
a
7
question.
months, I think, about 7 months altogether from when Irene got involved to when I finally had the paperwork that would close the deal. But it happened.
Well, and I have a question, if we can back up a minute, because the biggest complaint over and over and over is they told me to either that I could rent it out and it would pay for itself. Actually, we had an Air Force National Guard service member that involuntarily separated from service after serving for 10 years because he said at Westgate, they sold him a 4-bedroom as a rental investment when it's a young couple with a 6-year-old, forcing him to default, which affected his security clearance. And now, and the worst is Westgate, Wyndham, and Vacation Village, because their contracts state that you can rent. Unlike Diamond Resorts, their points, you can't rent to someone you don't know, and you can't use a third-party platform. When you rented, do you remember what the maintenance fees were and what you recovered?
Well,
I'm sure.
my maintenance fees are not as high as some of the numbers I hear you folks talking about. So again, I guess I feel somewhat fortunate, but nonetheless, converted to Canadian dollars, we were paying maybe the equivalent of about $3,000 a year Canadian in maintenance fees, which is still pretty high, and it kept going up. And the rental would cover maybe 3/4 of that. But in the last year, it was covering even a smaller portion of that. And I thought, no, this is just not working. I tried that for several years and concluded it's just not working. I'd like to make a comment, though. Do not ever feel that you're going to be causing any of these companies any financial hardship if you walk away. These folks own the properties. These folks can Airbnb them at 20% higher than market rate. Like, they will not be in financial trouble if you walk away. So don't let their various tactics of trying to get you to spend even more money with them. Like, it really annoyed me that the guy wrote back and said, all you have to do is give us this $1,900 fee and we'll get you out of your contract. I thought, you bastard. I mean, I've already paid you people, how much money extra and all those commissions you charged me on the rental. And now you want this money just to take back the property you claim has value? I mean, you bastard. But compared to the alternative, it seemed like a pretty good deal. Let's get this done. Irene agreed, give them the money and run. So that's what we did.
Yeah,
So as of this June, I am completely timeshare free, both in Ontario and in Florida. Yay.
Congratulations. And since Cheryl has been on the show, people will always post over and over, you can default on maintenance fees, nothing will happen. And Kiplinger magazine has been published since 1947, quite a prestigious publication. And the attorney, Dennis Beaver, wrote an article, and he interviewed another attorney that said, you can walk away from maintenance fees, you can walk away from a loan. Timeshare developers never sue. Well, I want to answer the question, and then we're going to have Cheryl give us an update on her journey with 5 different companies. But Dennis Beaver wrote another article because people want to know what's the worst that can happen to you. And it used to be, we had an attorney on the show that say this, very few HOAs have relationships with credit reporting agencies if you have no loan. And after hearing Cheryl, our board member, and he served over 30 years on an HOA, looked into it, and there are these companies now that have approached the timeshare HOAs and said they can be the intermediary to report to credit reporting agencies. So now there's a flurry of people reporting that their credit score on maintenance fees has dropped 50 or 60 points. At Carriage Ridge and Carriage Hills, that was the only time I heard where they could, Carriage would take you to court, and they were collecting from kids and grandkids, which just, ended up infuriating all the members. So, and then the worst that can happen with not making loan payments. I attended a 5-day trial. Things can change. This, I believe, was 2022. Wyndham had sued an exit company and a law firm. And I was introduced to the lead witness. I still remember her name, Ramona Harrington, in charge of lending at Wyndham. And she testified that they do not pursue deficiency judgment. So if you default on a $300,000 condo, and the condo is sold for $325,000, and there's a shortfall, kind of like a short sale, you owe them that difference. But in a timeshare, a $30,000 timeshare is worth nothing to you. But Wyndham or whatever, whoever, can take it back and resell it tomorrow, and then turn around and sue you for the promissory note, doubling their money if they can get away with it. So the only time I've heard of that happening, and it hasn't been for a while, is Holiday Inn filed about a dozen lawsuits, kind of using you as a pawn to punish the law firm because they knew the law firm didn't charge any extra to defend. And they were never successful. It's an unsecured loan. Never say never, right? Dying and paying taxes. But that, when you're dealing with the issues that Glenda talked about, or Amanda with cancer, and you're getting collection calls on top of that, if and I told the story about in the beginning, you might want to take a couple of those calls. By federal law, they're not allowed to harass or call your neighbor or your child or your mother. They can't bother you a lot at work. And so if you search cease and desist letter, there's all kind of templates to send a cease and desist letter to stop those. For a couple of years, I thought you needed an attorney to do that, but you don't. So Cheryl, what has happened in the last week or two since you talked about, I don't have the list of I remember the worst one is a place at the beach in North Carolina. You have one in the Poconos. You have a Great Eastern, and 2 more I can't remember, but has there been any progress? And also if you have any comments about the experiences you've just heard.
I've been in the timeshare industry since 1980. My father bought one when I was like 20. Timeshares were about 5 years old. And then I went to Hawaii for my birthday. My father gave me a couple of weeks, and I've never been to a presentation. I walked in the office. I wanted to buy in Hawaii. I owned in Hawaii for 22 years. In 2007, I lost a big job. I lost a big career and had trouble for about 5 years, so I filed bankruptcy. The bankruptcy court took my Hawaii timeshare because at the time, timeshares were worth money at one point in time. And then I didn't have timeshares for a long time, just so people know. So then I met this woman on Facebook, and long story short, she was giving away all these timeshares. She had to give them away at no cost. I even know I was telling Irene too. I worked for Blue Green for like 3 months, but it was just too unethical for me.
Let me stop you there. You've mentioned that on the last 2 shows. When you say it was unethical, can you go a little bit onto why you felt that way?
Well, I wasn't unethical. Why they hired me and what they loved about me is I had a timeshare in Hawaii for 22 years. And I had 22 years worth of amazing, I have no complaints. None. 22 years of amazing vacations. I still have 6 weeks vacations in RCI. But they just would want you to, I guess, interview the person, analyze their needs, try to figure out what the person really likes, and work your sales presentation based on the needs versus the actual timeshare itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to do that. I just said, I had a timeshare for 22 years and I loved every minute of it. So there was nothing unethical that I ever did. And that in itself, people would, wow, she had a time. And it was the truth, 100% the truth. They would just want you to lie. They would just want you to say anything that you could to get a sale. That's all they cared about.
Was there any training? Was there any
Yeah.
training in the beginning? I've heard sales agents, and I've heard from many former sales agents that you go through a training where everything is above board, and then when you get on the floor, they say, forget everything they ever told you, and
Right.
this is what you have to do to make a sale. And
Right.
now, in the last week, has there been any progress on the 5 different resorts?
Well, just so folks know, I had actually 7. I got myself out of 2 at no cost. And what I think might help me right now, because I was only given these like a couple years ago, and I was going to travel a lot. And then my car got hit twice. I got T-boned twice in 14 months. So I have back injuries. I am getting a letter from my doctor this week. I met with her last week that I'm not supposed to fly. Because if I do, I can end up with what's called, I've had it before, drop foot syndrome, and you have to end up on crutches because you can't move your foot. So I'm getting this doctor's letter, and I'm going to be sending that out to the other 5 and see, because when I've talked to them, they're like, do you have any medical documentation? And I said, well, let me get you some. So I'm going to see if this medical documentation, the documents, she says she can't tell them what my issues are, but she can say that I'm not supposed to fly because of medical reasons. And we'll see if that makes any difference, because right now there's no movement.
Well, what are the 2 timeshares that did take it back?
Well, I wanted to go back to Hawaii. I found Hawaii on eBay for $1. So I bought the Hawaii timeshare. And I just had called them, and they knew me in the office because I had been there for 22 years, and they just took.
Was it a brand name like Hilton, or was it just an independent resort?
It was Hilton.
Okay, so Hilton's Bay Club at Waikoloa.
Yep.
Yeah, my office was 20 minutes up there at Parker Ranch. No relation. So
Yeah.
I don't even know if I introduced myself at the beginning.
I think a lot of it has to do with supply and demand. The one that they took, the one that's giving me the hardest time is the Virginia one. A place at the beach. There's not a lot of supply and demand. So it's economics. Hawaii, low supply, high demand. I also had one in Colorado. Low supply, high demand. Colorado took it back. All they did, they sent me a deed. They signed off on it. I signed off on it. Done deal. Didn't cost me a penny. But the other 5, they're fighting me. But only one has sent me to collections. One has sent me to collection. That's a place at the beach. And they told me that if I pay 3 years worth of maintenance fees, none of mine have very high maintenance fees. There's one in New Hampshire. It's $600 a year. A place at the beach, I think it's $1,100. And if I pay $3,500, they'll let me out of it. And I told them that's not going to happen.
If you add all 5 of those together, and I'm pretty surprised that the Lola is saying that 18 months of maintenance fees, which is what Blue Green charges, and then call to exit, and now 30 months to exit. I don't know what the industry is thinking, but this show has really brought people together in a way that's never happened before. And when Kimberly asked me, Kimberly is she was referred by a law firm. She's talked about on the show that she was devastated from her husband's death. And so they didn't feel comfortable charging her anything. And she said, we need to get you a TV show. And I'm like, yeah, right. You know, 'cause people have offered to do this and that and usually don't come through. And then called on February 24th, 2024. We're going live at 1:00. And I almost had a heart attack. Our very first guest was Taya, who was also disputing Wyndham. And it was the Service Member Civil Relief Act. You know, she was seeking the 6% interest she was entitled to. But when I think back on all the guests we've had, I just can't express my appreciation enough for everybody that's here today and all the past and future guests willing to share their experience. And I'm hoping it's prompting some of these major networks to just buyer beware. And now we have, it looks like we're down to our last 4 minutes. So I want to take a minute for each person. Let's start with Amanda and Dan. Have you been getting, I forgot if you told us you've been getting collection calls or not yet?
We recently started receiving them, and they're quite relentless. But
Yeah.
I did talk to them, and she kept trying to get us to make payments, or she tried to say, well, what if I remove some of the fees? And I just kept telling her I'm not paying for something that I was lied to about. And when she continued, I said, look, if I make a payment to you, that means I don't feed our 7 kids. And she let me go.
And it also means you still own it. So, and every state has a statute of limitations on it's usually 4 to 6 years that the company can sue on a debt. And an attorney reviewed we had someone we had to remove from our, TARDA has a Facebook group to members supporting members, people in your situation. And Jake, I mentioned earlier, where just because you're getting a call from a collection agent doesn't mean that the collection agency has purchased the debt, has acquired the debt, an assignment of the debt. But once they do, then it's in the hands of the collection agency, and there is that statute of limitations. Glenda, did you say you are getting calls yet?
I haven't received calls yet, but I'm just in the kind of the state of mind. If I don't know the number, I block it. So they'll have to send me an email or something, because I've been just so busy with my mom and some other things, and I'm just kind of overwhelmed. I've been very appreciative to the TARDA group and also the Facebook online group, because it helps validate, my own feelings. And I had, just a point about the maintenance fees. They do keep going up and up every year. And in the meantime, they're renting them out to other people that don't even have timeshares. The last time I went to a vacation in Phoenix, everything was dirty. The AC didn't work. What am I paying for in the first place? And so it's just an accumulation of frustration. But when I was, really lied to about consolidating all these loans and freezing the maintenance fees, that was the final point. I try to maintain my own integrity, and I guess I expect other people to, and that doesn't always happen.
Absolutely not. And Blue Green has suspended hundreds of accounts accusing people of commercial activity. And I don't think I have enough time to talk about Ashley, but she only took her grandma's points that she had accumulated over 20 years. And one of the relatives canceled, and she booked one ad on Blue Green Marketplace, and her account got suspended. And when she only took them because they said there was no charge to take it back. So she got upset and called them and they said, oh, that's changed. Now it's 18 months of maintenance fees. You have to pay us $8,165 to take it back. And if you wait till August, it's another $5,500. Who in their right mind would buy a timeshare? Brad, we have 30 seconds left. Do you have any parting comments? Oh, you're muted.
I want to
There you
wish
are.
all the best to everybody, and I hope your outcomes are all positive. And thank you so much, Irene, for doing this.
Well, and thanks for staying on the group to support others, to let people know that it can be done. And next week on the show, we're having two of the most disturbing reports I think I've heard, and that's saying a lot after about 3,000. So I see our producer Mark has been behind us, listening to us as we share our experiences. Mark, thank you for your support.
No
And
problem at all. Y'all did another great job, another amazing show. So yeah, the man Jack there listening to the reports and hearing these concerning reports, but you always do a good job of staying on top of these cases and staying on top of these things, situations that are not fair to those that are being cheated by the system.
well, thank you. And it looks like we're pretty much out of time. And as usual, the hour flew by.
Yep.
Thank you for everything, Irene. You're appreciated.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
And everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good luck.
You too.
Do I have to end the stream, Mark, since I started it? Let me try. It looks like we're frozen.